Act 4 of the Archon Quest Chapter 1, We Will Be Reunited, has finally dropped after weeks of anticipation, and it did not disappoint. One thing I personally liked was the presence of our favorite playable characters, since none of them were in the prelude. We got to interact with Ganyu, Barbara, Rosaria, Jean, and Razor, which is always a welcome addition. Aside from that though, this hour-long quest has given us a ton of information regarding the history of Teyvat, the Abyss Order, Dainsleif, and the Traveler and their twin. But also, the twist at the end seemingly will change everything about how the Archon Quest will continue moving forward. So today, I want to break down what we've learned from this quest, as well as speculate on future developments. Just a disclaimer, there will of course be major spoilers for We Will Be Reunited in this video. I can say that it will be most enjoyable when played blind, so you have been warned. But before we dive into it, I must mention that this video is sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends. You've probably already heard of this mobile game before that is available on both iOS and Android, and that's because it features an extensive variety of different types of gameplay, whether it be fighting raid bosses, taking on dungeons, doing campaign battles, or competing against others in PvP arena matches. You can play the game exactly how you want to. If you watch my videos, you know that one of my favorite parts of any video game is the character designs, and Raid Shadow Legends has its fair share of cool looking characters. I personally like this guy, Kael, because he has not one cool skull mask on his hip, but two. Raid Shadow Legends has just passed their 2nd year anniversary, so there is more content in the game than ever before. They're releasing their 2nd version of the Doom Tower, which grants new rewards and new gear for champions if you defeat the 2 new bosses, the Celestial Griffin and the Eternal Dragon. That said, this game does not alienate its new players since you are given rewards at a fast pace. The new updates are not slowing down, with a new set of epic and legendary champions due to release in April. If you use the link in the description or scan the QR code that is on your screen right now, you will get free epic champion Jotun, 100k silver, 50 gems, and 3 ancient shards for champion summons. All these rewards will be waiting for you here. Note that these rewards will only be available for new players and only for the next 30 days. Thank you to Raid Shadow Legends for sponsoring this video. So let's just start off with Dainsleif, because he is definitely one of the most interesting parts of this quest. Even though the prelude to the quest was literally named Bowkeeper Dainsleif, all we learned about him there was that he was hunting the Abyss Order. Even the fact that a bow is a main branch of a tree didn't mean much before, when we had no context. But now, after learning that he is an immortal from Khaenri'ah and that all others from there have since become Abyss monsters, I strongly believe that this bow refers to Dainsleif being a lone descendant. We don't know if he is aware that Kaeya is also from Khaenri'ah, or how Kaeya's lineage was able to survive the disaster. Maybe the idea of the main branch reflects Dainsleif's pure blood, as opposed to Kaeya, who is a hybrid from some other race. Either way, I think it's pretty likely that we will eventually meet other survivors down the line. We also learned that Dainsleif held the title of Twilight Sword and was one of the guards of the final dynasty of Khaenri'ah, but his failure seemingly led to his people turning into monsters. But despite all that, there is still a lot we don't know about him. For example, how was he cursed with immortality? Also, why exactly are he and the Abyss Order at odds, and how do his powers work? It's very clear that he's capable in combat, and he has access to some form of magical abilities, but we never see a vision on him. Presumably, he doesn't have one at all, considering his distaste for the gods. Maybe the people from Khaenri'ah are born with innate powers that allow them to advance their civilization, or maybe they figured out how to gain divine power without being gifted it from the gods. I am very certain he will be a playable character down the line because of how he was presented in the Travail preview. So far, the only character without a vision or gnosis is the Traveler, but they still are bound to using one of these 7 elements in the game. Maybe Dainsleif will have some mysterious 8th element that he, the evil twin, and the unknown god will all use. And it's pretty likely that with a title like Twilight Sword, he will be a one-handed sword user. I'm really excited since there are an endless amount of possibilities for his kit to explore, but we will be in the waiting room for a very long time. Next up is the new enemy type, the Abyss Herald. A herald is defined as an official messenger bringing news, or a person or thing viewed as a sign that something is about to happen. This likely refers to how the Abyss Heralds have command over the Abyss Mages, so they only appear when there is something important for them to do. It seems that they too were people of Khaenri'ah before they took on a more monster-like form. But I'm curious to know what separates the people who became Abyss Mages and those who became Abyss Heralds. Perhaps they held some kind of authoritative position within Khaenri'ah, allowing them to become stronger beings. I also wonder if there was something that affected what element they have control over, since the enemy archive implies that there are other heralds who wield other elements. But unfortunately, there is not enough evidence to look deeper into these things, so we will just have to wait. What we do know is that they do not hold the highest authority within the Abyss, seeing as how they bowed down to the evil twin and called them prince or princess. Speaking of that evil twin, I was super surprised at how much they were featured, but now that we finally get to meet them, here's what we learned. Canonically, we are still named Lumine and Aether despite every other instance of our name being replaced with our username, which is interesting. We already knew that our twins sided with the Abyss and had met Dainsleif before, but now it's confirmed that they see each other as enemies. As Paimon later mentions, they have a high level of authority within the Abyss, but there is still probably someone above them. We also find out that the evil twin has already traveled through all of Teyvat before, and at the end came to some kind of revelation that probably led them to join the Abyss. Considering none of the people we have met so far in our journey, other than Dainsleif, have recalled seeing someone who looked like the Traveler, we can infer that their journey happened long ago. This is interesting because it means that despite a lot of time having passed, the evil twin thinks we will still find out the true nature of the world as they did. This truth being timeless is definitely something to keep in mind as we move forward, but as of now, I have no clue what it could be. Maybe it has something to do with the fake sky theories which have been floating around for some time now, but I honestly am not quite sure since that heavily ties into the Unreconciled Stars event, which was not permanently added to the game. Getting back to the evil twin, we can visually see that their accents are white, unlike the Travelers, which changes depending on their current element. They also have the same sword as they did in the opening cutscene, so they never lost their powers like the Traveler did. That said, they must have acquired some Dark Abyss powers along the way. As I briefly mentioned before, I do think the evil twin will probably be obtainable down the line. Considering how they have unique animations despite having the same abilities, it would be a travesty if we ended up never being able to get them. A few final things about Khaenri'ah. We learned about the origin of the Ruin Guards finally, which is pretty neat. It was confirmed that it was a region that never had a god, but then was destroyed by the other gods, which we can assume is what we see in this teaser from last August. Also, their goal seems to be to manipulate powerful beings in order to take down Celestia, the Sky Island which houses divine beings greater than the 7 Archons. What effects this action would have on the world is unclear, but seeing as how the Archons have such great influence over their regions, things will probably get a little crazy. Sorry for taking so long to get to this point, but here's what I mean by "we will be reunited" changes everything for the future of Genshin Impact's story. In both the prologue and chapter 1 of the Archon questline, our objective has always been to find the Traveler's lost twin and nothing else. Even though we ended up saving Mondstadt and Liyue from potential disaster, that stuff kinda just happened. Now in this quest we finally find them, yet we as the Traveler barely made any progress towards our happy ending. This is because we now understand the extent to which their goals differ from ours. We don't have to find them anymore since they are now waiting for us. But what we do want to do is learn more about the history of Teyvat, the history of Khaenri'ah, the will of the gods which rule this land, and the Abyss Order who opposes them. The goal has changed. We now want to save our twin in hopes of actually reuniting with them and being a family once again. But that begs the question, what are we saving them from? And will we actually be saving them? Clearly they know a lot of things that we do not. Our moral compass dictating what is good and evil is the culmination of everything we have experienced so far in Teyvat, which is very limited compared to the grand scope of this world. A common theme that has been ever present in the game is the blurred line between right and wrong. Moving forward, we will have to be much more careful in what we place our faith in. Will we eventually come to see and understand the perspective that our twin holds? Will we eventually come to oppose the gods and friends who we have sworn loyalty to up until now? The antagonistic characterization we have gotten of Inazuma's Raiden Shogun so far seems to suggest that we will soon start to see a darker side to our beloved Archons, but the truth is that only time will tell. As the Traveler, our objective has changed, and as the player, our mindset has changed. With this quest, MiHoYo has laid down a lot of groundwork for future plot points. And if Attack on Titan Seasons 3 and 4 have taught me anything, it's that when early foreshadowing develops over a long period of time and finally pays off, it really pays off. We actually got a hint of that in this quest with the first field tiller being placed in Stormterror's lair long before this quest with no explanation. Having a lot of random loose ends makes sense for a game like Genshin Impact because of its expansive, fleshed out open world. It's only natural that there would be mysterious things here and there because life is full of mysteries, but having them all eventually explained to be meaningful in one way or another makes Teyvat seem much more believable and alive. With the Teyvat chapter storyline preview having been shown way back in September of last year, it is extremely clear that MiHoYo knows exactly what direction they want to guide the story in, and I am looking forward to the wild ride ahead. Except to be honest, I still don't know why we didn't break the statue like we said we would at the end of the quest. When I thought of the idea of this video, I was not sure if there would be enough for me to talk about, but as I started writing, more and more thoughts just came to me. That just goes to show how great of a job Genshin does with its narrative storytelling. I'm not sure if I will be able to make these kinds of analyses for future Archon quests because I imagine they will focus more on their respective regions than the overarching story. But anyway, let me know what you thought about the things I discussed, and if you have any of your own theories or observations. So that's all for this video, and as always, thank you for watching.